Welcome to the Friday edition of Juan's World, and today's title is maybe a little bit obscure, but you'll understand as we go along. What I'm mostly going to focus on in this video is shopping, and mostly I'm going to be looking at malls. There are a lot of malls in Phnom Penh. I've counted at least 14, and there may be more than that. And they are in stark contrast to the street vendors that I'm showing you here and that were in a video some weeks ago, and I'll put a link to that video in the description. So you can get clothes, meat, shoes, fruit, vegetables on the street, and it's mostly fresh, mostly okay. I'm a little bit troubled by the meat out in the hot sun all day, but other than that, it's reasonably well priced, and you can get a lot of things. But you can also go to malls and get those things at a greater expense. So I want to talk about that diversity between shopping on the street and shopping in malls. So let's get started. Now today I'm going to look at 4 malls that I visited in the past week, and I'm going to start with 2 that I'm not going to have a whole lot to say about because I didn't really go into them in any great detail, but you just can see the beginning point. I'm going to look at a very new one called Prince International Plaza, which I've only been inside once and I wasn't terribly pleased with. And we're also going to look at Olympia Mall, which is pretty old. I think it was built around the same time that the Olympic Games stadiums were built in this area, which is generally thought of as like Olympic Center. And then I'm going to go over to Ratana Plaza, which is a mall very close to where I live. And then I'm going to look at Aeon Mall, which is a pretty fair bike ride for me, 10 kilometers away. And we'll see the contrasts of newer malls versus older ones, and big versus little. So let's just start with Prince International Plaza, which is on Russian Federation Boulevard, somewhat to the west of the center of Phnom Penh. And without going into too much detail, I'll just show you very quickly. It's mostly all coming soon. If you walk around, you see very fancy shops. Coming soon. There's nothing here except when you go down into the lower part, there is a giant supermarket, which I've been in once, and it was sort of interesting. Except that when I tried to pay with my debit card, and even though it said Visa accepted, they didn't have any machines to do it. So I had to pay in cash, which was a little bit difficult because I don't carry a lot of cash on me. And there were virtually no one in the market. And if you look now, you can see there's no one here. It's vacant. So let's now move to Olympia Mall. Olympia Mall is a little further east. You have to jog south a little bit to get to it. And I'll just walk you around here a little bit also, and you'll notice that there's a lot of vacant shops in the outer regions. Like the mall itself is indoors, and I'm not going to take you into that. But here, when we're just walking around outside, you see that most of the shops are shut or boarded up. And I was here at lunchtime, so like it's pretty vacant. There is this Lucky supermarket. Lucky is a chain that is everywhere in Phnom Penh, and you'll see it again when we go to Ratana Plaza. And it's the supermarket that I use a lot for things like meat, because I don't like to buy it outside. Now, when we walk around, and I've been reading the statistics about Olympia Mall. It has a website, and it says it's a big, vibrant, new, exciting mall, and it has at least 1,000 visitors a day. And I read that and I thought, what are you talking about? 1,000 visitors a day? It's open from 9 in the morning till 9 at night. That's 12 hours. And it gets 1,000 visitors in a day. That's not even 2 per minute for 12 hours. It's nothing. So, now this is a leitmotif that you're going to see a lot of. And I don't really understand it. But if we keep walking around, one of the things we'll see is that outside the mall, there's a fair number of food vendors. And still not a lot of people visiting them until you get to the very edge of the mall. And here you see there are some people, mostly students, because there's a college not far away from here. So it's lunchtime, and they get let out, and they have to find somewhere to eat, and this is convenient. But that's about it. People are not going in and out of the mall. And there's not a lot of foot traffic. You have to drive a car or a motorbike here, and you'll notice, although that's kind of hidden, but in order to drive here and park, you have to park in a subterranean parking space, because this part of town doesn't allow for open parking spaces. So in order to build the mall in the first place, they had to dig out a huge like basement area and build a parking garage, and then build the mall on top of it. So I haven't seen a lot of people so far, have we? All right, well, let's go back down along Russian Boulevard just a little bit until we get to Ratana Plaza. Ratana Plaza is one of those hallmark sites. If you're trying to direct somebody, you'll say, okay, do you know where Ratana Plaza is? Okay, well then get there and then turn left and blah, blah, blah. Like that. It's a place that everyone knows. And before the tuk-tuk drivers had really got a bead on where I live, which is not far from Ratana Plaza, if I was out somewhere and had to get back home, I would often punch into my app Ratana Plaza, and I would get a ride there, and then I'd walk. It's only about 20-minute walk to my home. So now Ratana Plaza, we're approaching it here. I'm going to go inside, and the ground floor is full of very strange shops. I mean, there is a cheap bazaar right at the beginning, at the entrance, but then there's a lot of places that sell watches. I mean, 3 or 4 shops selling watches, and they've got thousands of them on display. And there's also like 2 or 3 shops selling mobile phones, and then also some women's cosmetics, handbags, and a huge Lucky supermarket, as I mentioned before. Now, this is the supermarket that I often go to when I need to get meat and other things that I can't get anywhere else. It's full of canned goods. I like to get certain things in cans. Oats, for example, I'll also get packaged. Rice, various things. It's a fairly convenient place. I'm going to get fruit and vegetables on the street, but a lot of things I'll get here for convenience. Now, when we go up to the next floor, it's mostly clothing and shoes, and the layout is very much like the layout on the streets, except it's a little bit tidier and easier to get around. And the prices, I think, are comparable. I'm going to have to find somebody to help me with that, but I don't think they're too much different. Although you can't haggle with these people so much, partly I think it's because the people who are selling the goods here are not the owners of the store. They're shop workers, whereas on the street, the person who's selling the goods owns the goods to sell, so they can bargain with you, and these people can't so much. I mean, to a certain extent they can. They often do not show the price of something, and they might give you a higher price than they expect at the outset, knowing that you're likely to haggle. But it's fairly tight as opposed to people on the street, which is much looser. All right, so now let's go up another floor, and here is all the food court stuff. And they've got different kinds of food: Cambodian food, Chinese food, Korean food, Japanese food. And what you notice most particularly is there's no one here. Now, this is lunchtime. This is the time when people should be coming out for lunch. There are two problems. One of them is that to get here is a nuisance. You've got to ride a motorbike or a car here, or a bicycle like me, and there's very little place to park. There is no big underground parking space here. You have to park on the street pretty much. I mean, there are places where you can park, but it takes an effort. Then you've got to go in, you've got to go up a couple of floors, and so on. And the food is not cheap. Like some of these restaurants, proper sit-down restaurants, are going to be charging something like $10 per person for lunch. Well, that's a lot of money for local people. I can buy lunch in a market or on the street for $1, but no problem. I mean, you get a really nice meal for $1 or $2. So, going to a fancy place where you sit down isn't really worth it, and so it's empty. And you'll see this again in a minute when we go to our next mall, which is Aeon Mall. Now, Aeon Mall is all the way over towards the Mekong, and somewhat to the south of the commercial center of Phnom Penh. And I'm just going to take you in, and you'll see it's a lot bigger than Ratana Plaza. Ratana Plaza is sort of homely and smallish. I mean, there's a lot going on there, but it's kind of small. Whereas Aeon Mall is vast. I'm not sure entirely how many commercial floors there are, but there are certainly 4 main floors, and they extend in multiple directions, and there's nooks and crannies everywhere. I don't know how many total stores there are here, but there is a ton. And apart from right at the beginning, where there's usually some bargain stores that change all the time. Sometimes they're selling shoes, sometimes they're selling clothes, demo, and it's affiliated with the supermarket, which is next door, because like when you buy something at one of these cheap places, you have to pay for it by going through the supermarket. And I use the supermarket a fair bit because it's got a lot of Japanese stuff in it, because the whole mall is owned by a Japanese corporation. In fact, there are two. No, in fact, I think there are now 3 Aeon malls, and they're fairly prosperous. I mean, and they've got all of the name brand stores, like Nike and Adidas and Versace and what have you. And instead of like in the Ratana Plaza where everything's sort of piled up and you just kind of dig through things for something you want, these stores are much, much, much more like the stores you would find in a mall in the United States. But what you'll also notice, I mean, there is some foot traffic here, there are some people here, but it's still pretty empty. And one of the reasons is this is very expensive. You cannot just, get a pair of shoes for, say, $5 or $10. I mean, you're going to spend $50, $100, $200 on the name brand stores here, and people just can't afford that. So I'm going to take you to a couple of different floors, and just as in Ratana Plaza, when I'll take you up to the top, we'll get to the food court, and this is also vast. I mean, you've got everything imaginable here. You've got Korean barbecue, you've got Thai food, you've got Japanese food, of course, and not just like one Japanese restaurant. You've got like 7 or 8 different Japanese restaurants. And you'll also notice this is lunchtime. It's empty. There's no one here. And when you look at some of the signs, I don't know if I can pull one up, but I'll see if I can. Like a lunch for 2, $25. Well, I can get an equally good restaurant meal for much less than that. I don't go out to restaurants all that often, but I do sometimes with a friend of mine. We don't spend $25 for a meal, and that like $25 is just for the food. It doesn't include the drinks and other extras. So who would want to do it? So, I'll close with this question, which I will continue to ask various people. Like, how do these malls survive? The malls in the United States survive because of Christmas. That's pure and simple. When you go to a mall, like I used to go to a huge mall, the Galleria in Middletown in New York, to do my shopping now and again. And I avoided it like the plague at Christmas because you couldn't even get a parking space, and it had a gigantic parking lot that held thousands and thousands of cars all around the mall, and you would spend 20-25 minutes cruising around waiting for somebody to leave so that you could get into their parking spot at Christmas. And then the rest of the year virtually empty. So that's how they made their money, because people in the United States go bananas at Christmas. They just buy presents for everybody, and they also buy stocking stuffers and all of that. But here they don't. There's no Christmas rush. There's no rush at Cambodian New Year or Pajam Bun or Bonham Tuk. They They're not consumers. It's not a materialistic society. So how do these malls survive with so little custom? That's the question. I will try to find an answer and maybe get back to you. I'm going to do a little bit of early Christmas cooking next time. I'm going to do a medieval mincemeat pie with real meat. But for now, please like, please subscribe, please tell your friends about my videos, and have a good weekend.